Good evening, everyone. Is the mic on? All right. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? All right. So, should be a lot louder than that. Can you hear me, John? Okay. All right. So here we are tonight. So about 4 weeks ago, Beds Plus came to the village board and gave us a presentation. Received a little bit of feedback after that meeting, and I decided to hold this public forum because I thought maybe there was other residents that had questions and concerns. So clearly I was correct. So just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Informal format tonight. We're going to give Beds Plus an opportunity to give a little short presentation, and then we'll open up to residents' questions and concerns. Very said informal. Let's keep it civil. Do my best to keep this within an hour or so. But a lot of people here tonight, so we don't want to anyone go home without their questions answered. So with that, I will turn it over. And of course, we have some board members up here as well. So any questions, we'll be hanging around to answer your questions. So I'll turn it over to Beds Plus.
Well, everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about Beds Plus and to talk about permanent supportive housing and the program that we're looking to develop here. My name is Mark Rudzinski, and I'm the president of the board of Beds Plus. And walking through the door at any moment should be Tina Rounds, who's our chief executive officer. So let me start off by giving you kind of a quick overview of who we are. Beds was founded back in 1988 in the LaGrange and Countryside area. We've expanded over the years. We partnered and ended up joining forces with a similar Beds type organization that served the southwest suburbs based in Oak Lawn, but really ran services from Oak Lawn to Tinley Park area and places in between. Last year we served 2,500 people across our scope of services. And our services, you can kind of think about them in three buckets. One is prevention. So if people are housed and they're having trouble, we'll work with landlords, we'll work with churches, whoever kind of puts us onto the case, so to speak, to help keep them housed. Our second bucket, and there's Tina, our second bucket of services is what we call interim and transitional housing. And that's to get people with a roof over their head, get them settled, and ultimately really kind of get them on the track to get benefits or to otherwise get housed in a positive and long-term situation. And that entails a whole bunch of different things. Early last year, we opened up a medical respite facility in the Summit area, 16 beds. We partnered with LaGrange Hospital and Christ Hospital in Oak Lawn to basically provide a landing place for people who were in the hospital dealing with all sorts of things, from cancer to surgery and everything in between, to ultimately have a place where they can recover instead of being discharged back to the street. Once they come into our system, they get assigned a case manager, and we work with them to kind of get them housed, get them qualified for benefits, and ultimately move them into a permanent housing situation. We manage roughly 225 units of housing from apartments to other permanent supportive developments that we've done across the west and southwest suburban Cook area, and we manage some other housing units as well. What I'd like to do is maybe turn it over to Tina at this point,
Sure.
who can certainly talk about beds with great passion. Thank you so much, Tina.
I apologize. There was a crash. 294. Thank you. My name is Tina Rounds. I'm the CEO of Beds Plus, and thank you for your interest in our development. We're here today to really give you the concept of what we're hoping to do and tell you a little bit more about our organization and the services that we provide. So, I'll flip to page, since you heard a little bit about Beds from Mark, our board president, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what permanent supportive housing is. Permanent supportive housing is essentially a apartment that has services connected to it. The individuals who qualify for these permanent supportive housing units have to go through a vetting process. Typically they're on a wait list. We open up wait lists, and then people who have a disabling condition, who were formerly homeless, can be put on this list. Then they can, they wait for an opening to occur. There's additional vetting that occurs through a third-party property manager. We work with a company called HODC, who manage hundreds of units in the Chicagoland area. And then we can select those people from the list as those openings occur. Our services are on site with folks. They have a contract directly with the Housing Authority of Cook County for what's called project-based vouchers, where we work with them and they get a housing subsidy. They pay 30% of their income. They're subject to an annual lease. That annual lease then is renewed. You know, there's behavior just like any, you know, and tenants of a person staying in an apartment unit, just like anything else. But the difference is there is a rental subsidy and then services provided. The developments are typically, you know, part of a community plan, you know, to have a wide range of housing stock within a community. We can typically provide other benefits to the community through the grant-making process. You know, for example, putting in new streetlights or some infrastructure improvements because we raise separately state and county and sometimes federal funds for these developments. You know, they're new, they're attractive. What you see on that page is a 20-unit permanent supportive housing that was developed in LaGrange that would be very similar to what we're proposing, that we've operated for the last over 6 years.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what public permanent supportive housing is not?
Sure. Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of misnomers about public housing based on, you know, kind of our collective knowledge of, you know, what public housing was in the past. These are small community integrated facilities that are what we call right-sized. They're not large-scale developments. They're not developments that are kind of unmanaged and maintained. They don't have a large concentration of people, but they're beautiful new developments that provide you know, services on site so that people can truly stabilize. So we might have in our brains, you know, kind of the public housing of the past. This is kind of a new iteration, and it's permanent supportive housing, not really public housing. So that's really a differentiating. People have to income qualify. They have to go through these vetting criteria. And you know, they have to be citizens. So it's really set aside for people who are, you know, U.S. citizens. So, you know, we're a nonprofit organization that works within a HUD-based continuum of care. So that continuum of care is how, you know, organizations like BEDS, you know, work in relationship with HUD. So we work with all the suburban Cook County agencies and shelters and prevention, you know, organizations like Catholic Charities and South Suburban PADS and, you know, Connections for the Homeless, Respond Now. We're in partnership with all these agencies. And just like a police district or a school district, we have a district, and our district is Southwest Suburban Cook. And we have a few $1 million actually of contracts for scattered site housing, which means we lease housing from market rate apartments. And you know, we have a person that lives there, subleases, and we provide these same kind of services. We have that for the southern part of our territory. And so what we are seeking is a base of operations in the southern part of our territory. So we cover typically from about Cicero to about Will County, or, you know, part of Tinley Park. So Midlothian is one of those communities that's rightly located for us on public transportation, where we can manage this permanent supportive housing program, our rental assistance program. If you've had the chance to look at our website, we do have an office in LaGrange, we have an office in Summit, and we have an office in Oak Lawn. So this would be just kind of a natural progression where people can get to where our caseworkers are. Our caseworkers can get to those units and provide support to people. And in terms of operations, which is on the next page, We do have development experience, as I mentioned. We, not only to the tenants who would be in this unit or in these units, but throughout our care. Part of our philosophy is to really stabilize a person through housing and supportive services. So we provide things like transportation, budget, counseling. We get people connected with healthcare, those things that you need to stabilize your life, that many family members might help with. We step in to assist. We try to get people connected with local library programs and things that kind of make life rich and full. So that's part of what our service is. We have about 500 volunteers throughout southwest suburban Cook, where we've got an initiative to bring volunteers back after the pandemic. We've, operated for about 38 years, starting with the churches in shelters, and really have expanded to provide a sizable amount of prevention services. Last year, about 900,000. We already talked about the units of housing that we have and our development experience. We have a staff of about 65 and, an overall budget of the agency just under $9 million. This project, our desire is to work with the community to identify not only a parcel of land, but also some of the requirements that the community has for its own development plan, and be in partnership around funding. So if, for example, there is community infrastructure that we can support through this development, we will. If there are private donations that we can raise, which we have in the past, we will. And we've done that through these other developments. And just so you know, a public charity like ours is under pretty strict audit and other operational guidelines, both with the state. We regularly have an Office of Budget and Management audit. So we are held accountable by those sources that provide us funding, including, an operational covenant we would have with Midlothian. And that could be prescribed in the way that to help us integrate fully with the streetscape and with the community's priority. And we're proud to be working with Brush Hill Development that is got an experience not only in the south suburbs, but with some really fantastic and beautiful developments that are throughout the suburban area, which there's some pictures of. So you'll see what a development would look like. A part of the tenets of these developments that are coming in through HUD and through the State Housing Authority is that they are, modern, that they are green, that they have features that will last for a long period of time, and that they are a space that somebody wants to be in, right? So you'll see, these are some pictures from interiors of developments that Brush Hill has partnered to develop. We would build up to 40 apartments, but depending on the parcel and some of the requirements of zoning, it could be as small as 20. So it'll depend on the actual size, what the requirements are for green space and parking and these things. We will have our regular office staff there every day. We do have staff that's on call and live live answer to phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we will not be doing our emergency services out of this office. This will be a permanent supportive housing location. Our emergency services are primarily done through our Summit Service Center. So that's where a person who is homeless comes in for services. This is strictly housing. So just wanted to let you know that. We do build-in measures with all of our facilities, and it would include this building as well, that there would be, camera features, that, the IP address would be accessible by the local police. And I know, particularly in LaGrange, we've had success with, we're at a traffic corner. So, we've shared lots of footage and, helped support police efforts not related to the development. And then also, we would have other key cards and entry measures in place, which we have at our other buildings, so that we can monitor and be restrictive about guests and so forth, which we have to as part of the development in general. And then finally, you know, on the last page, you can see and go visit some of the local developments that Brush Hill, which is the reason why we engage them as developers, have in the area. You know, Worth, one that's under construction. There's a beautiful development, Orland Park, Elsif, Flossmoor. So, you know, this might seem like a new concept, but it is happening all over the country and locally. So to have a nice development that is funded through public funds and private funds, and then operated by an experienced organization like ours that can work with people and help them stabilize. And it's really our strong belief that, you know, these kinds of services make a community really stronger by giving people access to services that they need, you know, to be happy and healthy. So that's the presentation. I'm sure there are questions. I'd be happy to take your questions, Ann or Mark or I. How do you typically do that? Do I just call on people?
Let's just start up front here.
Okay, yes,
Rita?
ma'am.
How many stories is this building contemplating?
Well, here in Midlothian, we couldn't go higher than 3 stories because you don't have a ladder truck. So it would be at maximum 3 stories.
3 stories. And I was reading online about your organization, and you're a nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay, so that means you would be filing to not pay property taxes?
Yes.
So what are you bringing to our community then? I mean, if somebody falls on your sidewalk and you're gonna dial 911, who's gonna have to serve you?
Yeah.
But you're not giving anything into the community, you're not, that's commercial property.
Mm-hmm. Right. No,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah, we do, the property, we would file for tax exemption, which, because it's a charitable purpose, would be allowed typically. Sometimes there are things that we can do in the development process to provide a benefit to the community. And then sometimes there is payment in lieu of taxes that can be built into the operation of the building. So that would be part of Midlothian's request to us in order to build on that space. And then, you know, we would be providing our prevention funding, stabilization funding at this location, which we already do. And as I said, part of what we do through our rental assistance is to provide a stabilizing financial assistance for local landlords. And so, you know, last year we gave out about $900,000 of funds. The year prior, $1.5 million of funds for people who are teetering on, you know, being evicted. So in that way, we have that access to service.
It's not helping people.
Yeah, right, yeah.
From a development perspective, when you go to build an apartment building like this is going to be a $12 million building, you know, give or take several $100,000. There are large permit fees involved in developing a building like this. We're going to start construction in Elsip on 25 units in a couple months. That building permit is almost a couple $100,000. So if you're looking for monetary benefits, that would be one.
What exact location are you talking about?
We don't have a location yet. We are here to get public opinion and public support for this project. And once we know that you would like this in your town, because it would be a wonderful benefit, we will go to find land.
Is it true you already own property in Midlothian?
No.
We do not.
That's a lie.
Don't know about that.
That's a lie, you own 3 properties in Midlothian.
Oh, well, not a property for development, but we do own some condominiums, yes. Yeah, sorry.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. So I'm kind of like, just like reading all this paperwork and everything, and I don't know. I feel like your company as a whole, like, goes around to, like, is gonna start maybe to, like, bigger cities around the country, and then, like, pull the biggest cities' problems out and spread it like wildfire to the suburbs. So I feel like that's totally what's going on here.
So if I could,
That's-
Sorry to say
yeah,
that.
Yeah, that's actually, I can just tell you how
That's like-
the safety net works.
Because I
Is
live
that
right next to it. Maybe a property that you guys are looking at, so.
Okay, I mean, the way the safety net works for social services related to housing is that everyone has a district, okay? So, there is about 30 agencies in the suburbs that work together and take their districts. So it's not that different than, say, a police district or a library district, where we work within our district to support and prioritize the community members in that district. So there really isn't, if somebody were to come to us from downstate or Indiana or, the city of Chicago, our directive is to redirect them to their local organization.
Okay.
Our
Because
funding
the way,
is specifically tied to establishing some type of connection to the service territory that Tina's talking about. So that means, where was your last job? Where was your last known residence? And so we're not in the business of just picking people up from wherever and bringing them out to
Right.
LaGrange or
Sorry,
whatever.
It seems like an epidemic or something.
Could you go back to the property that you already own in Midlothian?
Yes.
Were you thinking about that property, or what were you?
we
what were
own
your thoughts?
3 scattered site condominiums.
And who lives in those?
Pardon me?
Who lives in those?
They're people that are in transitional housing.
So the whatever who are convicts, right? Like, it was like a jail system really.
It's not a jail system release, it's it's families who somebody in the household has had a history with justice involvement.
There you go.
Most of them are families. One is a gentleman who's actually, we featured in our campaign, who is a paralyzed veteran who came to us through the VA, stayed at our Summit Respite. In his history, before coming, getting into the military, he had a justice involvement. Because of that, prior to the military involvement, he qualified for this, and he is now a Midlothian resident living in one of the condos that we own.
I mean, that's
A million
nice.
families.
I mean, that's nice, but.
It's one of 3. It's one of 3, but that's a typical.
How much money is the Midlothian Township gonna have to put out for you to build this building and maintain the building?
Nothing.
Nothing.
So we won't be maintaining this building in
No.
any way or form?
This building is being paid for with development funds from the state and the county and any other grant resources that we can pull together to build it. And then once it's built, Beds will own it. And they have a 30-year mortgage with the state of Illinois to run it and run it properly. And they have annual audits and a lot of oversight to make sure it's being run properly.
This lady's had her hand up.
Could you share with us the criteria when they're vetting the people that might be candidates for these housing?
They have to have a disabling condition that's documentable, and they have to be either at risk of homelessness or homeless to get on the list, okay? So then so what the Housing Authority of Cook County will open it up and have a list created. And then from there, once we have an opening, then the individuals have to fill out, both an asset assessment as well as an income assessment. They need to be earning income under 30% of the average median income. They need to have assets under $100,000. We do a credit check and a criminal check. Then that information is brought to us and we make a determination on it. In our other properties, we have a prioritization for veterans and for domestic violence victims.
So if someone has a criminal, do they get it?
It depends on the crime, so it depends, and
What
that.
about a felony?
That criteria is set by building, and it will be set by the Village of Midlothian. So for example, in the Village of LaGrange, we can't have anybody living at the building that had a federal crime or, a felony within the last 5 years. They can't have any ticket or any pending warrant, and they can't have had any, they can't be on the sex offender registry or have had any conviction for a violent crime.
5 years?
5 years? So
No,
you could be a sex
forever,
offender
for
at
those
the
two.
6th?
No, they can't be on the sex offender registry, and they cannot have committed a violent crime. And they can't have had any convictions in the last 5 years.
I don't know how to hold a straight face here. This is not.
We're very skeptical.
Okay, all I can do is tell you what we're doing now and what we hope to
What do you
do.
consider a disability?
Hang on, there's been some people over here with their hands
It's a
up.
wide variety, so it could be, usually it's a health and mental health disability, so,
Mental health and mental health.
yeah, and or, yeah.
Is addiction and alcoholism considered a disability?
It depends, not active use, but something in their history, and
From a halfway house there.
not necessarily from a halfway house, but somebody who, you know, they may have had addiction, but the underlying issue was a mental health issue like anxiety, depression.
Is this building being staffed by any employees 24/7?
We have our LaGrange building set to be staffed 24 hours and our Summit, because we haven't entered into that negotiation with the Village of Midlothian yet. It's not been set, but it can be staffed 24 hours.
Hey, Tina.
Our other two buildings have.
Tina, on this side, there's been a few people had their hands up.
I'm sorry, sir, what?
What are the requirements?
Guys, come on, one at a time, please. I'll bring a microphone around.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir, can you be clear?
You explained what are the issues to bring someone in.
Yes.
What are the issues that will throw someone out?
Non-payment, a violation of the lease, or a violation of the zoning ordinance, or the covenants and restrictions. So for example, in LaGrange, if somebody, if there is a crime committed, they're under immediate eviction. If somebody is non-payment, we start the eviction process after 30 days. So it works like a regular apartment.
There's many reasons a person can be homeless, and you've gone over some of the conditions, but again, getting back to the vetting process, we talked about drugs, people with former convictions as a felon, sex offenders. How much total control does the village have in setting the standards over those conditions? And also, where you constructed properties or have residents, how has that, if at all, affected property values in the surrounding area?
Those are great questions. Well, the village has control because they can build it into the covenants and restrictions for the development. More control, in fact, than they would have under regular residents or under other multi-unit developments or buildings, because we're a public charity and publicly funded. So we, for example, in the Village of LaGrange, we have about a 20-page document of covenants and restrictions that goes over no signage in the window, you know, things like we can't have sheds or an excessive number of bikes, you know, there can't be any alcohol found in the building. It's a dry building. So it's very, very prescriptive, which again, in contrast to a normal sort of owner, you know, you have much more control, and we have to be accountable to the village. In the Village of LaGrange and the Village of Summit, we're subject to regular reporting that talks about who actually is in the building and what our turnover rate. We need to submit those on a monthly basis. So what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
The property values.
Oh, the property. There's a lot of literature out there that demonstrates that supportive housing helps increase and improve and stabilize, properties. Because, and we saw that in LaGrange directly, that not only our services, there are, folks that we can help stabilize, but also because it's a beautiful new development that looks like a new condo development. And for pastors, we don't have a big sign, it looks like just a beautiful new development. And so in that way, managed well, it improves not only the streetscape, but the surrounding community.
So just one thing, the permanent supportive housing word is a government word. The government came up with it because there were people who would have been homeless because of their disability, and the state of Illinois was putting them in institutions and nursing homes. And if you're able to live independently but need a little bit of help, that's way too much care for you. So the state of Illinois actually got sued a while ago and said, we need to start building independent living facilities for those people who don't need full-time care, who don't need transitional housing, who don't need 24/7 babysitting like group homes, but they need an independent place to live that's one step away from market rate, just like everyone else in this room. So this building is meant for independent living, for people who are really close to doing it on their own, but just need a little bit of help. So that's what this really is. But it's easy to go down the road of, everything that it's not. And I guarantee if you allow us to build in this town, this will be the hardest building to get into of anything in Midlothian, because there are so many rules and restrictions. We built a 16 unit in Orland Park in 2021, and it's 16 units. One day we had 500 applications of people who wanted to live independent, needed a little bit of help. It was an organization called Sertoma Center up in Alsip. They opened that building. It's wonderful, beautiful building. We had one neighbor, and he was totally supportive of the project. But that's the need. And when you have 500 people who want to live in your building, you can be very selective about who gets to live there and make sure that they're going to be successful and not a drain on your community.
Tina, can you talk a little bit, because there was a question about how's it going to be staffed and all this. Can you talk about the supportive housing nature, how the folks that are housed are still assigned a case manager? Our LaGrange building has a dedicated social worker who's on site, kind of, building community there and kind of helping people make it work. Can you talk a little bit about that piece?
Yeah, so they all have individual service plans, and we work with them to achieve their goals, their stated goals. And we have, the opportunity for people to move on. So for those individuals, not only, as Ann had said, there's a high demand for this kind of housing, so we can't afford to be selective within fair housing standards. But then also people who can, be model citizens, for example, can get the opportunity to take their voucher and move to a market rate apartment. They don't get all the subsidy support that they would in a fixed location, so they have a built-in incentive, while residents, because many people want to qualify, and we've seen many graduates working with us. We only have a limited number.
Percentage, like you have a roundabout?
For the LaGrange building?
Any of them really.
Well, it depends on how you define it. Some people are with us, and it's towards the end of their life,
Okay.
because they've had a hard life, they're with us, I'm sorry to say, they're older. So if you kind of take those folks out, we have at LaGrange, we've got 7 people that are originally with us, and out of those, other 8, we've had turnovers, and I think there was one person that was fully evicted. There are many people that moved on over those 4 years, so just to have that one person evicted was
And that was since
high
like
success rate.
2016?
2016,
Yeah.
2015.
Yeah, the average age of a person who would live in a permanent supportive housing, independent living, with beds is 50.
55, actually.
55, okay, we're moving on.
Hey, there were people, there's hands.
Yes, ma'am.
First
Thanks.
of all, on the first page, you have transitional housing, and on the second page, you have that there is not transitional housing. How does a homeless person pay rent, is what I'd like to know. And in 12 months,
That's a pretty damn.
in 12 months, where did they go if they can't pay rent? They're kicked out and they wander our town?
This is not a transitional building. They have other
Well, it says
sites.
right here,
No, that's the
transitional
services we provide.
That's just what Beds does.
That's
Yeah,
just one
but let me
category of
answer your
services.
question,
If
so-
they don't have an income and they have to pay rent, who's paying the rent?
the rent is paid based on a sliding scale. So they provide 30% of their income. So it's rare that somebody has 0 income. And our job,
Homeless don't have any income.
Actually, that's not true. Many homeless
There's people
people
who work and
have,
can't afford a place,
have,
and they're
you
on the
know,
street.
have
Even
jobs.
shelters that
Yeah.
are closed during the day, and they wander around your town. We are a middle-class income Midlothian is. You're talking about places like Grange, Orland. We
Summit.
can't
Summit.
afford low housing income here. You can't.
Well, I just want to say that many people who are homeless, I mean, because we do run a shelter program as well.
And they're closed during the day because
Ours
there's
is
no
not.
staff there.
Ours is not.
Well,
But that's
we have
not what
people
this
walking
is.
around here that
That's not what this building is, though. This
it's
is,
apartments for low income.
right,
People who-
Don't-
but they have a 12-month lease like everybody else in this room who is a
And
renter.
what happens when they get kicked out because they don't pay? They wander around
They squat.
homeless only, they're in Midlothian wandering around.
It's rare that somebody gets kicked out of these buildings. Very rare. Oh.
Like Robbie? Yeah.
Just explain for me some of the supportive services that you provide. I hear you say that they have case managers and we provide supportive services, but what really is given to them and that they need to make this work?
Well, the way I'm going to stand just so I can see you. The way our services work is that we have a social worker that's assigned to a particular group of clients, right? So that would be consistent throughout our supportive housing profile, including this building. So people are required to meet face-to-face at least twice a month, but oftentimes it's weekly with supportive housing. Our staff would be stationed obviously there, so there's typically a lot of informal interaction as well. It all starts with what's called an individual service plan, client directed. We have several assessments that people go through. Our first order of business is to make sure that they've got all of their health needs taken care of. We work on their income, we work on their life skills, and then we work on community connection. So we try to connect them with, employment, socialization. Our goal is that they don't need us anymore, right? And so we work to promote those independent skills, and it's kind of customized by person. But we also do things like food security and employment. So we have a gentleman who works to help people get employed. We have, a food rescue operation where we deliver food goods to people, and then the case manager will work with a person. We give out things like, recipes with those food boxes. So we're trying to promote, their independence. So it's based on what their needs are and what their motivation is, and then what services, are available to them. So if they have a health condition, and we would connect them with healthcare, and then try to get them, oftentimes what people need is just connecting the dots. A lot of systems, like our healthcare system, even getting a job, even working through Social Security, they're very complex, and so you need a guide for anybody who's helped a elderly parent or, a family member, you need a coach and a guide, and so that's what our caseworker really does.
I
We
got a
have
question.
two over here.
This one in the back.
Matt, you'll get another turn.
Oh, thanks.
Let's get to a few others that haven't had one back.
Yeah, this is a little bit more to the board. Everything costs something, okay? My question is, it's a nonprofit. Will you guys do a study on what it's going to cost us as tax-paying homeowners, our property tax and things like that? I'm sure there'll be an impact, as converse to something that would be more commercial, being a nonprofit. What's it going to do to our property tax? Well, not really property values, things like that. What's it going to cost us out of our pocket as Midlothian residents?
So, as they stated earlier, they haven't bought a property yet in town to make this development. They're interested in Midlothian. The property that we listed on the public forum letter was their first choice on 147. I called this public forum to hear these questions and comments and concerns. If we got to the point where we thought we would approve the development, we would certainly take all that into consideration. Certainly there's going to be police responses, there's going to be fire responses, and Reed, I think you said, if they're not paying property taxes, how do we get reimbursed for those services? So while there might be, how many hundreds of thousands you said in permits to build the building?
ALSIP's almost 200 for a
Right.
25 unit.
That's a one-time shot. What do we
Right.
do every year after that?
Right.
Well, there
So
is.
those are things that we'll certainly take into consideration. But here, we're here tonight to hear what you guys are saying right now, so that we can make an informed decision as a board going forward.
Okay, I would add to that. Okay, someone's got the microphone over here, guys, hold on. I'll come back to you, don't worry.
Well, I have a question, this is kind of towards the board members and a comment to you guys. You guys have not, you say you haven't, got the property yet, but you can see on the wall, we had flooding problems in Midlothian. And everybody in here knows how bad 147th Street is, it still floods and gathers lots of water. And so my comment for you guys and the board is, okay, you build there, right on 147, say you get the property. And when you build, that creates more flooding problems for the surrounding houses. What happens to those people with their flooding?
So,
Yeah,
I'll
I
address
can
that
also do that.
question.
Yeah.
I will address that question. So, okay, first of all, everybody in this room probably knows we finished the Alley Creek project. That has helped immensely. Secondly, MWRD has their watershed management ordinance. Any new development that's gone into town, and I'm going to start with Walgreens, has to put in some sort of water retention. Because of where Walgreens is located, there was no extra property around it, so they were required to put an underground storage tank in. The Oro Hotel that's on Cicero Avenue, they have a huge retention basin in the back of their property. And that handles all their stormwater. Regardless of what goes on to that lot at 147th Street, whether it's a Beds Plus location or it's a commercial building, they will have to follow the MWRD watershed management ordinance to ensure and to take care of their stormwater management. So,
And we did with LaGrange, we put 3 large water retention barrels underneath the parking lot, and it is now the collection area for stormwater, and then put in a rain garden and a roof garden to help mitigate some flooding, because there was the same issue on that property.
I guess one other thing that I would say that I can only speak for myself, and I have talked to a number of the board members, is I know that the property over on 147th Street was put on the notice, but that currently is not zoned for residential, and we've made it a point on this board not to spot zone. And we also all realize that we have very few properties that we can develop into commercial property, and I think that's the intention of most of us, that where we have the ability to develop into commercial, that's our choice, and we don't intend on putting something in there just to, residential and just changing the zoning for that. So I would think from my perspective that we would have to find a location that would work, that isn't commercial, that isn't on our beaten path, that isn't going to take away from that income that this village desperately needs.
And we would want that too.
So they kind of answered my question, because my question is directed towards traffic. Traffic on 147 is horrible. Nobody pays attention to the lights. They use it as an expressway. Us and our neighbors across the street have both been hit pulling into our driveway. Someone just around the corner from us has been hit just crossing the street. And now you're going to add more cars in a specific spot. So even if it's only 20 units, and I know in your previous presentation you said they're disabled, there won't be that many cars. They're going to have workers, they're going to have family members,
Right.
and they're going to have guests. And 147 in Coster is one of the worst corners along 147.
It is
The
busy.
disabled people along there.
Or commercial development, I guess. Yeah, I think it's definitely a consideration, the folks that we see are more walker public transportation, but you're right, our workers will be there, so developing the way wherever it is at this location or another, we typically look at a traffic study so that we can affix the parking appropriately. And when we went through that process in LaGrange, we decided to have a single access, along the less busy street, only in one direction for those same reasons, to restrict, the traffic, to not add to an already busy intersection. So those, as you bring up these issues, if we're allowed to develop, then those would be the priorities we look at in the development process itself and in the negotiation over the covenants and restrictions on the property with the village.
I would like to say I fully agree with trustee Crowley that we don't change any ordinance, the village does not want to change any ordinances and leave that vacant property for something commercial and not change the zoning to residential. Just for all these reasons that we've talked about here tonight. Approximately a 3-story building, how much parking do you allot for a 3-story building? How many parking spaces?
Well, there'll be an ordinance within your development code, that we'll have to abide by or get a variance for. But then what we find is in these developments, there's like 20 to 30% of the people have cars. And then you have a space for each staff office.
But then they have visitors that come at night, they can come all during the night from all these felons from 5 years ago that come to visit at night and they're parking in the spots.
Well, that was my second part of that, is how many visitors do you allow for each resident? Do you allow?
It's actually not. It isn't. We do have a visitor policy. We do run other buildings like this. There is a visitor policy. There was a question about visitors, and I think you asked that too. So our visitor policy with these are that, they must be pre-registered. We have to take their ID. People can only have overnight visitors with approval from the case manager. They can't stay there more than 3 consecutive days, and there's a limit per year. So the visitor policy is very tight. You can't go unaccompanied up the elevator. The resident themselves would be the person that would get the least violation. So we're very restrictive on the visitor policy, and it's actually worked very well in our buildings.
Okay, and then my last question, the square footage of each unit, 550, does that violate everything for Midlothian?
Midlothian's for 1 bedroom, I think, is 750 is in your zoning code. If we wanted to go smaller than that, we would have to request a variance that they would have to approve or disapprove to make that happen. But in our experience of building buildings like this for this population, they only need 550 square feet. They don't have a lot of stuff.
It's mostly singles. They can have a +1 couple, but in our other building, it's all single individuals.
Matt, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
This guy's got a question, I'm coming to you
Okay,
next.
thanks. I'm gonna lose my thought by the time I get
Write it down.
That answers my question. There's one person, you answered my question, there's one person per unit.
The housing.
So the homeless person with a family, where's his family going?
Typically, we do not house them in these kind of developments. We provide a scattered unit for people, which is a better intervention for the household and the children.
So if it's a married couple that's homeless, or they have 2 kids, you're going to put them in different units separate the families?
Scattered units, yeah.
No.
Typically, if they
It'll be
qualify.
like it won't be a unit in this building. It'll be a unit that maybe we lease.
Somewhere
or we
in
can get 'em
southwest
into-
suburban Cook
Somewhere
County.
in the suburban area. We don't break up the family, if I think that's what
Yeah.
you're asking.
Yeah, so
So are you monitoring that, if one person, do you know how many people are supposed to be in the building, and are you monitoring that?
on a development as we're proposing, yes, we monitor it very, very closely. But in a scattered unit, we don't monitor it as tightly because it's just not, we don't have control. It's a market rate apartment. We master lease it from the landlord, and then we're regularly visiting there. But every single day, no, it's not possible.
I don't think he needs a microphone.
Can I just ask a clarification question? Would a scattered unit be like one of the 3 condos that you own here in town?
Similar, yeah,
similar?
we
Is
have
that
them
what-
throughout.
okay.
We primarily master lease, so we
Okay.
work with various landlords. We are the tenant, and then we sublease to that client.
Okay.
We have 9 condominiums throughout suburban Cook County.
Okay. What was your question, Matt?
Do you guys hire any of these mental people to work for you and pay them? Like,
Yeah.
what? What? Oh.
You know what, actually, sometimes we do hire people who were formerly homeless, if that what your question is.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
And we have
Let me
and we
rephrase
have
that.
we have a training program.
Okay.
And then we also have people who were former consumers, is what they're called.
Okay.
That utilized our services or the services of another agency that were, victims of violence, or they had one of the underlying kind of causes of homelessness in their history, both on our staff and on our board. So we have 2 people who were part of our services on our board of directors, people on our program committee, and then we have a training program where we typically, have them do janitorial work to start with. So
Okay.
we've had some great success stories.
Yeah.
And I think we've got 7 people with lived experience on our staff, and that actually includes me.
Oh.
Okay, this gentleman here.
The question I got is, you're talking about having 40 units,
Up to 40.
up to 40. Everything else you show in here is around 20, 25.
That's a
I'm
typical
retired
size.
police officer. I've dealt in my town, being adjoining to this town, when we've had units like that where they had 16 units, that's 16 times 1 of trouble. And you want 40 units, so with 3 stories, the police officer's got to go up and down if there is an incident? That's quite a bit. I mean,
40
what
would
about
be the
cutting back to
maximum.
about 20 or 25 to make these people a little more happy? I know the police would be a heck of a lot more happy. I sure would. And by the way, a secure building, I got the second most secure versus the police department.
Okay, you were right. Yeah, that's part of
Wait a
the criteria that we would work with the Village of Midlothian on. If the size was a priority, and we also have to look at the funding, the actual
It just
space.
seems awful lot, 40 units versus, in your literature, it's 20 or 25.
That's the typical size,
That is a
yeah.
little more reasonable to handle when you got somebody, when you got an incident, but when you're sending 2 officers up to the 3rd story of an apartment building, you're just asking for trouble.
Is it gonna have elevators?
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't go in the elevators, kids. You take the stairs.
Mention a lot of things about all your people coming in and they need key cards and all this stuff, how secure the building is.
Yeah.
How about people coming out of the building?
Yes, that's what I was
If
Which
you have
people?
anyone who lives there, if you have people who are, like, say, on disability, okay, well, then they're not going out to work every day. Where are they going?
Well, that's what they work with the case manager on. Again, we don't control every aspect of their life, right? But we're there to help them stabilize and become independent. So, the people that I can reference as an example, they visit family and friends. Many of them are engaged in community-based activities like at the library or, the couple gentlemen that I know that aren't working and are on disability that live at our Ogden Avenue facility are involved in the VA. They're just regular people doing regular things. They go to the grocery store, they go to the movies. So we monitor the access both ways though. So leaving, but we don't say, where are you going?
To address her question.
If that's what you mean.
We've got
if
a
that's what you mean.
comment here in the back.
Okay.
We understand what you do is probably good service, but we're a small community, we're already strapped. And you're trying to take potential prime business property away from us. And we would end up paying that property tax. It's not that their property tax just goes off the rolls. That money rolls over, so we all have to pay for that. Not to mention the police, fire, resources, public utilities, things like that. Why aren't you going after government buildings that are empty, like the city Waterford Manor down the street, that already have 15 rooms and 15 beds that are empty? Why aren't you looking at one of the buildings at Oak Forest Hospital? They're by the train station too. Why aren't you going in Blue Island where the empty hospital is?
Those are good suggestions. We have explored some of those. And there's been stops for various reasons. We aren't saying that this was a parcel of land that we thought could be a good development for some of our priorities, but it is up to your town to tell us that's not a property you can build on. But could we work with you to identify one where it would be a public improvement? Okay? And if there are parcels like that, we would like to work with you because it's an iterative, collaborative process.
Any commercial property or something that would be available to Midlothian for commercial property is a potential tax base for us.
Agreed.
Our taxes here in Cook County are getting so sky high, it's
Right.
ridiculous. Personally, I don't think we could afford you. It just comes down.
I think everybody has heard that sentiment, and I think the trustees as well, that commercial property is not a place where you would want to see us build.
And not only that, we have to pay for extra police, and it's gonna put a strain on the police, the fire department, public utilities. That's an unimproved property there. So then we have all this infrastructure, who's responsible for that? They're gonna tear up 147th Street to put new infrastructure in, put sewer lines, water, electric, gas. We really just can't afford it.
We do pay our own utilities, and I will say that, any apartment building is going to have a certain amount of police response, any place where you've got, 3, 5, 10, 20 people will have somebody who calls an ambulance or whatever every once in a while. But I would argue that we also add quite a bit, our presence to the local community, because we can work as a social service arm to the local municipality, and particularly the police department. And I'm 100% certain that the municipalities where we currently are operating a building will attest to that.
I just don't think we can afford it. I really don't.
Anyone else?
This is to the board, whatever decision that you make, this isn't just going to affect us as current residents. You're going to be affecting the future residents of this town too, 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. That property is going to be permanently off any kind of a tax base here in this town.
And keep in mind, we're residents too, and we pay our property taxes too, so we understand. We completely understand what you're saying.
So
Questions?
I just feel that we can afford it. Yeah.
I have to admit that you guys painted a pretty nice picture. I don't think it's going to work here. You talked about social workers, caseworkers, federal government money. On top of all that, and special projects that maybe you can help us out with.
Yeah.
I can't see it. And we're going to put our trust in social workers and caseworkers and the federal government. And, I can tell you how that's going to work out. It's not going to work out.
Well, the only thing I can say is that I would invite you to see the buildings where we have done that, so.
I don't need to see the buildings. I can just tell that you guys are just painting a nice little picture and it's not really working out.
Gene? Hold on.
Okay, my question is there any other properties in the Midlothian that you were interested in besides that one? And also, that property has been vacant for as far back as I can remember, and I'm 63 years old. And I asked my sister, who's 74, that was a lifelong resident of Midlothian, if she ever remembered anything there, and she said no. But that was
There's oil buried under there.
probably way, way, way back. I don't even remember that. But I just want to know what other properties would you
Yeah, we have not identified any others at this time. You know, as part of this process, we like to be collaborative and go to communities that want us. You know, right now, I got a phone call from the town of Northlake in 2017. They said, we have people in our community that need help, that have a disability, they have low income, there's nowhere for them to live. I'll give you a piece of land if you'll bring a nice nonprofit that's stable, well-organized, and will take care of our people properly. And we did that. We're doing the same thing in Worth. We went to Worth. They wanted us because they know there's people in their community that are on the edge, have a disability, need help from a really good nonprofit that's stable and not disappearing in a couple of years. And they actually are selling us a Metro lot that they don't need anymore because no one's driving, and this Metro lot's already off the tax rolls. So we're not going to be a drain in Worth. We're benefiting Worth, and they're very excited to have us because there's people there that need us and need the services and need the stability. So those are two examples of not being a drain on the community, but being a positive benefit, because there are people who need help.
How do they find out about you, like these homeless people?
Oh, we do outreach. So we work with, there's a suburban cook hotline. I have our
Do you work with social workers in the hospital?
hospital in the, we have these walk-in hours at our Summit Service Center Monday through Saturday from 12 to 4, where we have community health workers on staff that do intake. So we work with hospitals, we work with the McKinney-Vento liaisons at the schools, we work with the churches, we work with the municipalities. And then we have a street outreach worker who will do canvassing just to let people know about our services. They come into the emergency services, and then we work them through stabilization.
Yeah.
But the end goal is housing. And so those are all the things that would happen before somebody would even get on the list.
Can they stay there forever?
They can, so long as they comply annually with the lease.
Okay, I think it's a needed thing, but I just think this is the wrong time for it. That's just my opinion.
It's okay,
I
there's a
appreciate
question
that.
behind you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna echo what he kind of said back there is, it feels like you guys are trying to put lipstick on pig, like you're saying, you use the word disability and kind of decorate it so you're a jerk if you oppose it. You know what I mean? But like when you look at this, what qualifies the criteria seems like, okay, so if 20 years ago you were an alcoholic, technically you meet the criteria. You're like, this man was justice affected 25 years ago, so he meets the criteria. It's almost like you want to make them meet a criteria, because if you just kind of had this little thing back then you qualify. But what disabilities, because everybody wants to help the disabled, I wouldn't be opposed to if you were trying to take 22-year-old children and allow them some space to, if they have autism or they're intellectually disabled and they need extra assistance. But that's not what I'm visualizing. You're saying this is 55-year-old. I'm picturing it to be a little bit different than how it's making it sound. So again, you sound like a jerk when you say, I don't want to help disabled people, but is it majority alcoholism? Is it majority addiction? Is it majority schizophrenia, mental disabilities? Like that are, because this is where our children live. This is where we roam the streets. My kids run around. We gotta worry about guns half the time here. I'm not trying to worry also about mentally unstable people on every corner where my children play.
Yeah, no, that's very
So what
fair.
does that look like? Like if you take your Orland Park location, there's 16 units, what does the typical disability look like? I don't want to hear the veteran success story that you're going to share with me to make me feel warm. I want to know what realistically those look like.
Well, I mean, yeah, I can just go through the list of people who are part of us. Typically, the people who qualify for these programs have to have the wherewithal to get through the vetting process. So I'll just tell you that that's a threshold criteria in and of itself. So what you may be imagining is kind of a worst case scenario. So if I'm just painting the success, you might be, I think it's fair to say, maybe in everyone, or in some mind.
Your children play, right?
I live down the street from our LaGrange office.
Okay, so like you would question it. You would think the
Of course
worst
we
case
would.
scenario is
Yeah, of course, right.
we would-
So it's somewhere in between, right? It's somebody who maybe had, and I would venture to say that we all have people like this in our lives, that they may have had a decade, 5 years, 8 years, that were really tough in their life, and they're past it. They have to fill out an extensive application process, and I'd be happy to submit that. And we have the opportunity to say no to people who we do not think will be a fit with the community, meaning our community. We're not trying to take on the hardest cases in these developments because there's such need. There's such need, as Ann had referenced. And so it is kind of those people that can cooperate with us. Percentage of what?
Like, what is the percentages of disabilities?
100% will be a
I'm aware of
disability.
that, but what kind of disability are they? Typically, in a 16 building, do you have people that are intellectually disabled, or are they?
Some, they're typically low intellectually function, so they're not disabled, but they have some of them might have an lower IQ, and I would say that's about 35%. We have people who've had some substance use in their history, but aren't typically active users. So in a building like that, maybe you'd have one or two functioning alcoholics. I don't know, but it's mostly people who are past that. That was maybe in their 30s. They're in their mid to late 50s. Typically, the people that we see, they anxiety, depression. A person who has schizoaffective disorder or is schizophrenic, as you had mentioned, we don't currently have anybody like that in our buildings. They are in the homeless population, and it's a really unfortunate and sad case that have to be med managed. Right, have to be med managed. Right.
You're kind of shook by how bad it
Yes,
actually is, but
right.
then I also don't want what I saw every day in the subway.
Agreed. And the way to combat that, and it's nationally, stuff you can read, on Google or even on our website, that the way to combat what's happening on the coast, which is where majority of the homelessness is happening, the way to combat that in Illinois and in our community is to build infrastructure with solutions. And so that's why I'm up here getting all this, this is why I'm doing the job that I'm doing. Because that is the solution, and Illinois in particular has made a very big investment in building infrastructure because we all see what's happening on the coast. The most homelessness is happening on the West Coast, in the state of New York, the state of Florida, and the state of Texas. And so Illinois is trying, through an investment with the state, to just build as much infrastructure as they can to have solutions for people. Because being on the street is not a solution.
But they're also taking in tens of thousands and more people every day.
Well, they're being shipped here. Yeah.
Well,
And that, to a certain extent, that's a different discussion because they would not qualify for this building.
All right, we'd like to start to wrap this up with some final questions. I know you got a question over here.
I don't think he has gotten a chance.
You don't even mind.
I don't think he needs a mic. I think he's good. Do you want to sit back down?
No.
Okay.
So first of all, I see that it says 4339. I
Yeah.
own a property at 4335.
Okay.
Okay. That property's been vacant there since probably, I moved into the area maybe 40 years ago. Now if you own that property, you lost the property. And there's a lot of other issues. I think that your developer's already got that piece of property in his back pocket.
I don't have any back pockets.
Developer's right here.
That's her.
I don't have any back pockets. No.
We don't.
Don't after the tax roll on it?
No.
All we-
It's up.
South Suburban Land Bank owns it right now.
Yeah.
Since when?
They just got the judicial deeds a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So that's first thing. The second thing is that everybody's correct. Everybody is concerned about lifestyle, families, kids, grandkids, and everybody wants to help somebody. Now, I think if we weren't dealing with 10 million migrants right now, you'd have probably a whole different audience. But because we're being exposed to all of the negativity that's happening, and it's not just California or Portland or Seattle or LA or San Diego. It is in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, it is.
And in fact, if we had a different administration for this state,
we wouldn't be considered to be a sheltered, domiciled facility for those people to be shipped here. If that's what we're saying, they're being shipped here. They come with various different addresses or family members, and God bless them.
Are you talking about migrants? I'm sorry, are you talking about?
Of course I'm talking about migrants.
Okay.
Because it's the top of everybody's mind here. I was called today to say, you better show up because they want to put a facility in for migrants.
It's not a facility.
I understand,
Yeah.
but the people that called me believed it was.
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm all in favor of having commercial property, generating a substantial amount of taxes, which relieves the house owner. And hopefully you're able to find something, maybe in this community, that would fit the bill, and everybody here would feel comfortable with it. But I think if we're worried about, are these people drug addicts? Are these people pedophiles? Are these, nobody wants that element. And if you can give them the understanding that that type of person, when you say, well, they have to have 30% of their income. Okay, well, what's the average income of the people that, give me some demographics. What's the average income of the people that are in your locations?
Well, typically they're on
show some
entitlement
analytics.
benefit. They're typically on entitlement benefit, which is just under $1,000 a month.
Okay, so they're already in some type of form of,
Social Security.
yes, subsidizing, okay.
All right.
All right, we've got two more questions. This young man here and Sandy.
I want to make sure I understood
Okay.
something you said. If an eligible tenant has a spouse and 2 children,
Yeah.
the tenant is in the facility.
No, we would work to keep the family unit intact, and they would not
Do
qualify.
what?
We want to keep the family together,
I know that.
and they would not be eligible for these units. They would be eligible for other programming potentially. And usually with family, with kids, we want to have it be inconspicuous. We don't want a family to feel like they're in public housing, right? So we want them to be in an apartment building like anybody else, so kids can play in the hallways and be a part of the community. And so we just provide this subsidy. Okay.
That someone said they would find local apartments to support the individual that was living in the building.
No. That's not what I meant. What Tina just said, if it's a family, they're not going to be a candidate for this building. We have other, I think in the thing we said, we control about 150 units, 200 units. We'll find a scattered site apartment somewhere.
So if someone applies as a family, they're not eligible.
They would not
Right.
qualify.
Correct, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Number one, I want to say thank you to the mayor and the board for hosting this tonight, because obviously we have a lot of questions, lots of comments, and concerns. Number two, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Even though you've had some heat, you handled it very well. I don't appreciate being told places like Worth know their need. I think no one in this room is dumb, and we know that there is a need. We see what's happening on the streets, we see what's happening on the news. And being on our good side as residents and what we want is not treating us like that. I did not appreciate that at all. I think that we do recognize there's a need. Some of us agree whether it's here or not. We disagree, but maybe the location, yes, Midlothian, but not that location, or not Midlothian at all. But I think we all do recognize there is a need. We just want to make sure our needs as residents who already own property, rent property here are met by our tax dollars for what will end up being the police department, the fire department. We're not getting any tax revenue. And so it was good to hear that something would be built in. So those are the answers we need. We don't need to be made to feel less than because we don't understand. We do understand.
It was not my intention to make you feel like you don't understand your need. It's been brought up that we don't bring anything to the table. And I think we do bring things to the table when we can help people that live here who need help. That was only my intention.
Understood. Thank you. But thank you very much.
We did build into the LaGrange unit. Can I address the local question? So we did build into the tenant selection plan. So each of these buildings have a tenant selection plan. And in LaGrange, there was people, same kind of, comments. And there was an interest in how do we preference people who have a strong connection to the area. And so anybody who had lived could document that they've lived in the township, so Lyons Township, got extra points because those, when I was saying there's prioritization for domestic violence victims and persons, veterans, we have 2 set-aside veteran units in that building, they rise to the top of any wait list. And so that was something that the village insisted on. We were able to institute. And actually, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people that live there that grew up within a half mile of the building, which I think is really cool. So that is something that if based on your comments, the village could say, we want to see this in the tenant selection plan, and then we can submit to that. So I think that is really great to be able to have that stake in the local community by preference, having some level of preference. There's fair housing laws, so we have to make sure it's worded right and everything, but
All right, last question.
Yeah, I just have one question. Because you have a building that has a staff in it, that you have disabilities or whatever, do you offer like counseling or therapy within the building?
we're not counselors,
Okay.
we're social workers, so we're kind of like the agent, So sometimes people can receive counseling through their, primary care physician group. Sometimes people can receive counseling through organizations like Sertoma or through, Aunt Martha's or the Blue Cross, through the local hospital system or private practice. So what we do is we investigate what's possible, we bring them there, we help them talk about it, we help them get their medication, we make sure that they take their medication or whatever. That's our role. We're not the counselors per se.
So they're a case manager?
We're case manager, yeah.
Arranges outside?
Yeah, just like all of us, right? Like if you need a specialist, you can make it work. That's the role we play to help a person.
That is an important part of their healing, is they need counseling.
For sure.
Therapy, they
Yeah.
need, and
Right.
I didn't know if you have a staff, if you have like facilities within it.
Yeah, usually our ratio is 15 to 20 counselor, or 1 counselor to 15-ish people. That's the intensity level.
Just say worst scenario, there is a recovering addict of any kind.
Right.
And they go out and do their thing, as you said, you don't monitor all that. And somehow they end up with drugs or alcohol.
Right.
Come back intoxicated or whatever. How is the situation like that handled if they bring it onto the premises, if they go inside their unit? I mean,
It depends on how severe. It can be from, a lease violation to immediate eviction.
Isn't that a lease violation? You said there's
It's
no
definitely a lease
alcohol.
violation, but depending on how
So how many
severe.
strikes do they get? I mean, if someone's gonna do.
In our other
how many do
building,
they
it's
get?
3, so it depends on how severe. If it involves the police, it moves to immediate eviction.
All right. Well,
We have to strive, then it says there's functioning alcoholics, which is.
Right, yeah. I mean, but we have right to inspect their units. And you all had the question.
all right, so I want to thank Beds Plus and Brush Up. Thank you for coming out and sharing your vision. Residents, please, we want your feedback, so don't do it on Facebook because we don't always watch Facebook. Call us, email us,